Colonel Jim Johnson is acting completely out of character at the family's New Year's dinner, especially with his interpreter's 24-year-old daughter, Haveen.
I remember not being able to eat. Everything about this is off. They had their own little private corner down on the end of the table. Haveen had a digital camera in her hands, and Jim was messing with it. And it was the same camera I had been given for Christmas. And he'd given her one too, exact thing. I really didn't know how to process it. You're just ingesting it and trying to take the next breath. Keep your composure, don't fall apart in front of these people. That night, and I asked him if he was having an affair with her. And he said, no, her family would kill her or disown her. Not, I don't feel that way about her. And then I asked him, well, have you kissed her? And he said, yes, but not passionately. What the hell does that mean?
Chris is left alone to wonder how much trouble her relationship is in.
But I didn't want to believe that he was having sex with her. I still didn't want to believe it. I went into his office when I opened the top drawer, and I saw a notepad, and he had written 3 columns: divorce now, divorce in 6 months, divorce a year from now. And he had plotted out which would be most advantageous to him. I just remember when I found that note, feeling like the blood had drained from my face. That weekend I not only cooked, but I remember running a load of laundry for them. I did my husband's mistress's laundry. Jim got home and I said, I found a note in your desk today. And I said, are you divorcing me? And he looked at me shocked. He said, well, I'm sorry you saw that. No. And then he said, well, is that what you want? I said, no, I don't want a divorce. I want us to work things out.
Jim denies the affair, but Chris remains dubious.
I knew that the child, Haveen's daughter, could not have been Jim's. He had a vasectomy in June 2000. I think she was born in November 2007. It's not his child. I kept looking. And I don't know if I was still trying to look for something to prove myself wrong or just prove myself right. Well, I finally did. He has a black book, and in the back, he had all these secret email accounts. And that opened up, at that point, 3 years of emails that he had been communicating with Haveen. And some of them were so juvenile. Reading them were embarrassing. It was like he was a teenager, a horny teenager, literally. One of the emails she wrote to him was like, I'm your little shaitan. It means devil in Arabic. That, I'm your little shaitan, we make trouble all your life, kissy, kissy. As the emails progressed between them, I started realizing certain things he was saying with her that corresponded with events in our life, like him taking money out of one of our personal accounts. He had taken $10,000 and converted it to euro and gave it to her. My legs started shaking. I couldn't stop it. And I thought, screw this, I'm calling him. Woke him up and screamed in the phone, are you her? He can't deny he's having an affair. And of course he said, you're recording this call. Someone's listening in. He wouldn't answer the question. It then led to me insisting that we go to counseling to see the family life chaplain in Vicenza, because I was not about to give up. I was not going to throw the towel in. I thought, I'm going to fight for my marriage. Unfortunately, there's a fair amount of adultery in the Army. Chaplains are there to help preserve marriages. The chaplain gave us this book, and the book was about adultery. I don't even remember the name of the book. I hated it. It just made me so angry. One page said, the person having the affair, it's not your fault. And he just grasped onto that. Look, it's not all my fault. It's your fault too that I'm doing this. It allowed Jim to give himself permission to continue to blame me for his actions, which is insane.
If you're a psychologist, this is standard transference. It's transference of blame to somebody else so that you can feel good about yourself, and you build this case, and you actually begin to believe it.
Of course, now I look back and he lied even to this chaplain during our counseling. Not only did he not stop the affair, he continued it and got even more deeply involved.
Despite the betrayal, Chris continues to put Jim's needs first. And so does Jim.
Jim called early November, how soon can you be ready for a trip? I was like, well, where am I going? And he said, I've gotten a plane ticket for you and you're going to leave Italy. The only way I can fix our marriage is for you not to be there when I come home. I want you gone. I didn't know at that point what he was capable of.
He knows how to plan, he knows how to execute, he knows how to do war gaming, action, reaction, counter-reaction. Revenge becomes very, very powerful.
A few months after Carol Dennis moves on to his farm commune, Stan King makes her his church wife by taking her virginity.
I guess you could call it rape. And from that time on, I was his wife and expected to perform like a wife. There was a lot of psychological control. You had to make the prophet happy. Eventually, he brought in a wife, a young girl, and she stayed with us. And he would have sex with her, with me in the bed. Her name was Lolly. She became Stan's wife when she was 10 years old. So she was quite comfortable with that life.
The expectation when you're a polygamous wife is that you will do whatever you're told. If your husband says to you, you must come to my bed tonight, and he asks 2 other wives or 3 other wives, they all must show up. And when they show up, they are expected to do what the prophet wants them to do.
You just learn to be obedient. If you didn't please the prophet or showed any kind of resistance, nobody in the house would talk to you. That was a very lonely world.
Everything in polygamy comes down to arithmetic. If one man has 5 wives, it means 4 men have none. It's not good for anybody unless you're the leader.
Eventually there would be group sex, and certainly that was even worse than one wife in bed with you. It was horrifying, but it made him happy, and that was life.
While Carol's night duties are in the bedroom, her days offer little respite.
It was a busy, busy life. We raised turkeys and pigs on a large scale.
To keep a cult going, it needs income, it needs financing. And it's really easy to make money when you don't pay your employees. They were working long, hard hours.
He started a health food business. I became very involved with all of that. I've always had somewhat of a business mind anyway.
Carol's involvement in the cult's business helps compensate for her lack of family contact. Her mother moves to Missouri on behalf of the cult, while her father remains in Ontario and rejects the religion.
Stan didn't want my father around to influence me in any way. He would phone to the farm, but he was told I wasn't there.
In 1976, Carol finally makes good on her most important job.
When I was about 23, I had a large cyst on my ovary, which was removed. 3 months after surgery, I was pregnant. My father didn't know anything about it, but About 6 weeks before my son was born, he worried for my safety. He didn't always understand everything that was going on, but he loved me, and he couldn't understand why I couldn't pick up the phone and just call him and say, "Hi, Dad, I'm okay." So he contacted the police.
This presents the opportunity that Carol had been hoping for: police intervention.
I wanted to leave. I wanted to be saved.
But when police arrive at the farm, Stan orders Carol to hide.
Stan went outside and we could hear everything. They were just chit-chatting, and Stan reassured them that I was fine. He suggested that perhaps my father had mental issues. After all, Carol's an adult, 24 years old, so everything was dropped and police were pleasant and they drove away.
Now, Stan takes action to embed Carol even more deeply into the cult.
After that episode, they made me marry his eldest son, Joe King, to protect my unborn child. Stan, being the father, they didn't want that revealed, that he had a polygamous wife, let alone many polygamous wives. So the marriage to Joe was a sham marriage, on paper only. He never touched me.
On July 2nd, 1977, Carol gives birth to a baby boy.
It was amazing. It brought me so much happiness. So much. And then 18 months after he was born, I had my second son. 2 bundles of joy. It gave me reason to live. Stan would beam when he was around them. He just loved them, he adored them. And my sons adored him too. They loved him so much.
For the first time in 5 years, Carol feels some contentment in her life. But Stan's youngest son, Fred, doesn't share this sentiment.
Fred King showed episodes of jealousy towards my sons. He would torment them. Here's a candy, and would almost be in their hand, and he'd take it away and put it in his own mouth. He was just mean to them.
By 1982, Stan's cult has grown to include 80 congregants in the surrounding area.
There was a lot happening. Stan eventually bought a printing company, which still exists to this day and is very successful.
Stan also buys a former ski lodge just outside Owen Sound to accommodate his growing flock.
There was a lot of heavy-duty renovation, and everybody was working at it to help. We had church branch in India. We supported an orphanage there.
By 1986, Stan has 7 wives and 10 children. Mark Athens' evening out with his friends and girlfriend has ended in confusion.
I'm going like, what the hell just happened?
Charity just tears out of there. And I don't even understand.
James thinks he knows what was behind Charity's hasty retreat.
James says she didn't want to deal with any of the Mike Flores questions from any of us. So it was a giant blown up situation to create drama. And then I think, oh, that's right.
The next morning, there's still no sign of Charity. It's James's chance to get Mark alone.
They sit down, and James begins to just unload all this material that Mike Flores, explained to him.
I gave him a rundown of my dealings with her. I met her at the tattoo shop years ago. Charity liked getting older guys to fall for her and then getting what she wanted out of them, whether it was dinner or jewelry or, taking care of some of her bills. Charity just uses, sexual favors to kind of reel them in. She talked about how to manipulate men to get what she wanted out of it. Weak men with money who are searching for a relationship. Use them while she can and just go on to the next. She's a master manipulator. She's sweet on the outside and just a monster on the inside once she gets her fangs sunk in. I told James to tell Mark to get out now while you can before this guy just loses everything. This is the real deal, and she's literally out to take all that she can.
A dire warning, which Mark completely ignores when Charity returns a day later.
James said Mark's response was, well, that may have been her in her past. That's not the way she is now.
You know what? I had lost somebody that I spent 22 years of my life with. To feel that for another person, I opened up totally, 100%.
And now, Gina and James are the ones who feel unwelcome.
There's a lot of tension in the house. You go in to get a cup of coffee. If she's in there, she just immediately removes herself from the room. I'm sure she doesn't want me asking her questions.
I'm getting told over and over that they're just using you. Charity had told me that James had tried to sell her drugs. She had told me also that James had tried to come on to her on multiple occasions. I was upset, of course.
Honestly, I was really hurt by it. He must be believing this stuff. And at that point, James and I were like, we need to immediately get out of Mark's house. We get everything done quick, and we move where we needed to be next door. It was weird. We lived right next door to Mark, but we didn't talk.
Everything really started going into high gear within a matter of weeks. I got down on one knee and asked Charity if she would marry me. And I guess I'm expecting something that, okay, yeah, and then come give me a big hug and a kiss and oh my gosh, but it's subdued. She looked at me and she said yes, she would. I guess I'm thinking of a crescendo when it was more like a little vibrato, But that's the way that occurred. And she told me she didn't want any of her family knowing. Nobody. Daughters, nobody. Charity had pushed it, wanting to get married in South Dakota at Sturgis. So we went to South Dakota. We got married in City Hall in front of pictures of all the mayors of Deadwood, South Dakota. We go back. The people at the resort that we stayed at had drinks for us there, and that was it. That was the end of the night. What a wedding night, huh? Nothing else happened. Actually, nothing else happened for the next 6 days. So for 6 days, we didn't consummate the marriage? Seriously? What the hell is going on? On the way back, I had 20-something hours of driving to think, and the whole time back, I felt like I'd made one hell of an error.
Once back home in Willis, Mark sets his concerns aside and commits himself to supporting his new family. But it's a strain.
expenses increased tenfold from the day we were married. Charity told me that Bart didn't pay any child support. He was an ex-con deadbeat dad. That's exactly the way she put it. With Charity and her daughters, I had to pay for vehicles, I had to pay for furniture, I had to pay for apartments, I had to pay for college tuitions, cell phones, and I'm doing it all alone for a lot of people, even though Destiny was the only daughter that lived here. One day, Charity said she had to go see Paige and pick up some things that she had. She left at like 8, 9 in the morning. I would come home from work about 4 or 5-ish in the afternoon. She wasn't here. I was going like, okay, well, she's just busy. I'd text her and couldn't get a reply out of the text. She just disappeared off the face of the earth. Gone. She came back home at about 11 o'clock. And she's going like, well, I had a lot of things I had to get with Paige. I had suspicions that something was up. And that's when Dakota started looking into Charity's background.
Actually, I went through online, found some stuff about her. I went through the Victoria County, Texas Odyssey database. That's actually the court docket system, and she has a criminal record for a theft by check. She said she was a nurse.
All the lights, all the red flags popped up. You can't be a nurse with a criminal record. You just can't do it. I called the Texas State Nursing Board. They went and looked. There wasn't a Charity Parcham or a Charity or anything with her birthday in there. Anything, her social security, anything. I'm going like, are you kidding me? So she's been lying to me all this time about her being a nurse when she never was.
What else is she lying about? Now Mark really wants to know what Charity has been up to.
And then I also remembered that I put GPS trackers on my vehicles, on all the vehicles. So if one of them ever got stolen, I knew exactly where that would be. I said, you know what? I need to look and see where the vehicles are. And guess where the vehicles would be showing up at, especially the one that Charity had? At the old house in Spring.
Where earlier, Gina had observed men's toiletries and clothes.
Imagine that.